Meantime, let's talk about all of this. We rely so heavily on our friends and colleagues there at the American Institute for Economic Research, including Dave Hebert. He joins me. Dave, good to be with you. Thanks for being with us. So let's talk about these tariffs. The Associated Press puts it this way, that it's been nearly 100 years since the nation had an overall import tax rate as high as the one that is now in effect as of today. So this is on more than 60 countries. And the EU would face tariff rates of 10% or higher. Goods from the EU, Japan, and South Korea will be taxed at 15%. Imports from Taiwan, Vietnam, and Bangladesh will be leveled at 20% here. It's a high tariff environment, and all since April 2nd, Liberation Day. It's always been a wait-and-see approach. Obviously, in the very immediate aftermath of Liberation Day, the announcement, the market really dove, and I think everyone saw that. We know that. And then it rebounded. And now it's been kind of a wait-and-see approach. Are the tariffs going to have an impact? Are they going to start showing up in some of these inflation reports and the like here? Could you make the argument that their impact after Liberation Day and the kind of chaos of that have really mediated out, have tempered? Can you make that argument?
So I don't know if you can make the argument that they've tempered per se. What we saw in the first quarter was basically President Trump imposing new tariffs and raising tariffs left, right, and center almost every single week. That led to the massive stock market decline on Liberation Day, and it led to a negative 0.6% GDP growth rate for that quarter. Contrast that with the second quarter, where the tariff story has been one of delays, lowerings, and basically getting rid of them or delaying them until August 7th. And what we saw was 3% GDP growth. So if anything, the pattern that even my 6-year-old who's sleeping right now, hopefully, can understand is that when you raise tariffs, GDP falls. When you lower tariffs, GDP rises. The latest BLS report was quite harmful for the president. It was so harmful, in fact, that he fired the commissioner. So if we don't want to trust those data, what we can do instead is look at local news information that's coming out in the local articles. Now, I'm in Grand Rapids, Michigan. This is a state that voted for President Trump, and I'm in a particularly red county. What we're finding is report after report after report of manufacturing decline. Plants closing, canceled plans, small businesses being hit by these tariffs and shutting down.
Okay, but Dave, the Trump administration is saying $150 billion in tariff revenue has been collected. It's been deposited in the U.S. Treasury. They're touting that. What about that fact?
Well, look at Scott Bessent in the package you just aired. He said, look, consumers are going to eat some of that cost. Last week, Scott Bessent said that American corporations are eating some of the cost in the form of reduced profits. And just the month before that, President Trump threatened Walmart to eat the tariff or else they would get in trouble from him. So if this is the case, that this money is coming from foreign companies, why do we see American firms and American consumers eating the cost? We were promised that this would be coming from other countries. Turns out, just like every tariff in the past, it's coming directly out of the American people's pockets.
So are we on this course indefinitely, Dave, do you think? The tariff regime that is in place right now, is there an off-ramp or no?
So Milton Friedman had a great quote way back in the day where he said, look, once a government program is in place, it's very difficult to actually rescind it. Now, unfortunately, it looks like these tariffs are here to stay. What I can only hope for at this point is that they will stop being capriciously applied, that they will stop being inconsistently applied, and that the rule of law and stability will reign supreme once again. I sincerely hope we get back to a world of lower tariffs like we had before January, but unfortunately, I don't know if that's going to happen anytime soon.
And there's this kind of dual track story to the tariff angle here, working itself out in the courts. The parties are trying to decide if President Trump, any president, has the authority to use the rationale of a national emergency to levy such an onerous tariff regime here. So we'll have to wait and see what rulings come out on that, if there's going to be any resolution on that question here. Dave, while we have you, I want to talk about the Federal Reserve Board of Governors here. There's a lot of shuffling around, so to speak. I want to put this up. Truth Social, President Trump saying this: "It is my great honor to announce that I have chosen Dr. Stephen Moran, current chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors, to serve in the just vacated seat on the Federal Reserve Board until January 31st, 2026. In the meantime, we will continue to search for a permanent replacement. Stephen has a PhD in economics from Harvard University and served with distinction in my first administration. Trump saying he's been with me from the beginning of my second term, and his expertise in the world of economics is unparalleled. He will do an outstanding job. Congratulations, Stephen. So whose seat did Trump need to fill? Why is there a vacancy on the Board of Governors, Dave?
So there's a vacancy because someone, and I apologize for the viewers, but I've forgotten their name at the moment, but she's resigning effective Friday. And so Dr. Stephen Moran is going to be taking her place at least until January of 2026. Now, look, Moran is a Trump loyalist. He's very, very loyal to the president. And what the president has effectively done is just gotten one more vote on his side on the Federal Reserve's Board of Governors. Moran is very critical of the Fed. And at some level, there's a good reason to be critical of the Fed, at least since their inception. If we look at the inflation rate for the 100 years before the Fed's existence, it was 8% over that entire century. Since the Federal Reserve came into existence, with one of their mandates being to combat inflation, inflation has been over 2,000%. So there is arguments to be made that the Federal Reserve has done a poor job at its dual mandate. The question that before us, though, is whether Steve Moran is going to vote in a way that is consistent with Federal Reserve independence, or whether he's going to vote in a way that's consistent with loyalty to President Trump.
So, Dave, we do have her name. Adriana Kugler was the board chairman who announced her resignation effective immediately tomorrow here. Now, from what I understand from the reporting, remember, I spoke to some of your colleagues on Monday. There was some dissension in the FOMC about the latest interest rate decision. So Jerome Powell, the chair, he kept interest rates steady in the last meeting, but not all of the members of the Board of Governors were on board with that decision. I believe one of them was Adriana Kugler. Not time to tie the knots here. I'm not saying that that's why she issued her resignation, but she was one of two members on the FOMC who disagreed with Powell's decision to keep rates steady, to not cut them, essentially. Do you think Moran will be a voice urging Powell to cut them?
All signs point to yes. He is definitely a Trump loyalist through and through. On the FOMC meetings, I'm always curious to find out, and unfortunately we'll probably never know, are all those previous votes, which are typically unanimous, are they typically actually unanimous? Or is it something where the group reaches a group consensus and then votes unanimously to try to signal some sort of cohesion in the Federal Reserve rather than disagreement?
All right, Dave Hebert, as always, can't thank you enough. Have a good night. We'll talk soon.
Hey, thanks so much.